King Robert Baratheon arrived at Winterfell with his royal guards, his wife Cersei, and their children. It was supposed to be a happy reunion with his old friend, Eddard Stark. But Ned had seen the tired lines on Robert's face. He had grown fat and slow, and his eyes looked sad more than happy. Still, when the king asked Ned to be the hand of the king, he accepted. Catelyn was not pleased, but she trusted her husband's honor. In the original world, everything went wrong from there, but not this time. This time, Catelyn Stark made one small decision that changed everything. She didn't send Petyr Baelish's message straight to Ned. Instead, she asked Maester Luwin to quietly confirm if the message was true, that the Lannisters might have killed Jon Arryn. The Maester sent his own ravens and sent word to trusted friends in the Vale. Meanwhile, Ned and Robert traveled to King's Landing as before. The journey was slow and painful, but Ned kept his eyes open. He saw how Robert drank too much and how the Lannisters whispered behind his back. Cersei's cold glances, Jaime's smug silence, and even the young Prince Joffrey's cruel tongue all felt wrong to Ned. But this time, Catelyn came to King's Landing too. She said she missed her daughters and wanted to see the capital. But truly, she wanted to protect her family, and her presence would matter greatly. They were all there when Robert planned to go hunting. The same hunt that, if nothing changed, would lead to his death by a wild boar. This time, Ned and Catelyn didn't let him go alone. Robert had laughed at the idea. "Do you think I can't hunt like I used to? I'm still the same man who fought Rhaegar on the Trident." But Catelyn, with calm and steady eyes, said, "You may still be that man, your grace, but Rhaegar didn't have tusks and weigh 500 pounds. Let my husband and his men ride with you, at least for safety." Robert grumbled, but agreed. Cersei had tried to stop it. She didn't like the idea of Ned getting close to the king again, but it was already decided. So when the hunting party rode out into the woods, Ned Stark was right beside Robert. And when the massive wild boar came charging, it didn't catch the king alone and trunk. Robert had been drinking, of course. His belly jiggled with every step and he laughed too loudly. But the moment the beast came out, time seemed to slow. The boar rushed forward like a shadow of death. Robert raised his spear but was too slow, and that's when Ned stepped in. He didn't think. He just moved. He tackled the king sideways and rolled with him out of the path of the beast. The boar's tusks slashed the air inches from their heads. One of the royal guards tried to stab it but missed. Then, Grey Wind Robb Stark's direwolf, who had come along, leaped at the beast. The fight was fast and brutal. The boar was strong and full of rage, but between the guards, Ned, and the direwolf, it was finally killed. Robert had a shallow wound on his leg, but he was alive. Back at camp, Robert was shaking but grateful. He looked at Ned and laughed with a wheeze. "7 hells, you saved me, old friend. I owe you more than my life." Catelyn, who had followed them and waited at the camp, cleaned his wound herself. She kept her voice calm, but her eyes were sharp. She knew something was wrong. That hunt something felt off. It was too wild, too close. She began to suspect, what if someone wanted the king dead? The thought sent a chill through her bones. That night, Catelyn and Ned sat close by the fire, whispering low. "If Robert had died," she said, "Cersei would have placed Joffrey on the throne, and you would be blamed. Or worse, made protector of the realm and trapped in the game." Ned nodded. "Then we were lucky." But Catelyn's eyes didn't blink. "No, Ned, not luck. It was a plan. Someone wanted him dead." That was when everything changed, because this time, the Starks weren't blind. King Robert limped back into King's Landing a few days later, wounded but alive, laughing, like a man who had cheated death. The small folk cheered his return, unaware how close their realm had come to breaking apart. The Lannisters, however, were not pleased. Cersei's eyes narrowed when she saw Robert still breathing. Jaime stood behind her, jaw tight, saying nothing. Catelyn watched it all from the Red Keep's balcony. She saw the way Cersei's smile didn't reach her eyes, the way her fingers clenched too tight on Joffrey's shoulder, and Joffrey, he looked furious, as if something had been stolen from him. Ned didn't care about the whispers or the fake smiles. He only cared that his daughters were safe and that Robert was alive. But Catelyn, sharper than him in matters of people and poison, had already begun putting the pieces together. That evening, Maester Luwin's reply from the Vale arrived. Jon Arryn had been investigating something dangerous before his death. Something about the Lannister children. Something that may have cost him his life. Ned finally agreed to look closer. He began visiting the brothels that Jon Arryn had visited, asking questions about the bastards Robert had left behind. Slowly the truth began to form. Robert's children outside of marriage looked like him: black hair, strong jaw, Baratheon features. But his supposed children with Cersei looked nothing like him. Joffrey, Marcella, Tommen, all golden-haired, all Lannister, through and through. Ned's hands trembled as he read Jon Arryn's last notes, found hidden in the small chest. "The seed is strong," it read, over and over again. He understood now. The children were not Robert's. They were Jaime's, born of incest. That meant the line of succession was a lie. That meant treason. Ned wanted to go straight to Robert, tell him the truth, end this madness. But Catelyn stopped him. "You tell Robert now, and Cersei will run. Or strike first. She won't give up power so easily, and as she knows we know, she'll kill you, Ned. She'll kill all of us." He hated the idea of delay, but he knew she was right. So instead, they played the game slowly. Catelyn started meeting with Sir Barristan Selmy in secret. She spoke of honor, truth, and loyalty to the king. The old knight, long tired of Lannister schemes, listened. Then she met with Renly Baratheon, charming and clever, who had begun suspecting things on his own. Together, they began to build a quiet alliance, a shield of loyalty around Robert. For when the truth came out and the fire followed, they didn't move fast enough, because Littlefinger was always watching. Petyr Baelish had grown suspicious of Catelyn's presence. He saw her moving through the Red Keep, speaking softly to key people, and his mind, twisted by jealousy and ambition, began to guess the truth. And Varys, the spider, heard it all. His little birds whispered about the Starks, uncovering secrets, about the Queen's growing fear, about a truth that could tear the kingdom apart. Meanwhile, Robert drank more than ever, trying to laugh the weight off his shoulders. He hadn't ruled well. He knew it. He missed the old days when everything was simple, when the enemy wore armor and carried a sword. One night, Robert summoned Ned to his chamber. Catelyn came too at Ned's insistence. "I'm tired, Ned," the king said, eyes glassy. "All these lords and whispers. I just wanted a crown and a bit of glory, not all this scheming. You're the only one I trust." Ned took a breath, then spoke. "Then you need to hear the truth. It's not glory you're surrounded by. It's poison. Cersei's children, they are not yours." The silence that followed was long and cold. Robert didn't speak, didn't shout, just stared at the flames in the fireplace. Then he said, "Say it again." Ned repeated it, calm, firm. Robert closed his eyes. "I knew something was wrong. My father's blood doesn't show up in any of them. I just thought maybe the gods were mocking me. But not this." He stood limping to the window, looking over the city. "If this is true, then everything changes." Catelyn stepped beside him. "You must act before they do. They will try to kill us all if they learn we—" That night, Robert didn't sleep. By morning, he gave orders. Cersei and her children were to be watched, not yet arrested. Littlefinger and Varys were to be summoned, and Ned Stark was named Lord Protector while Robert took time to consider his next steps. But the fire had already begun to burn. In the shadows of the Red Keep, Cersei Lannister had already made her move. The sun rose over King's Landing with a golden shine that meant nothing to the people in the Red Keep. Inside its walls, shadows moved faster than light. Robert Baratheon, wounded and weary, had finally seen the truth. But truth in a place like this was a dangerous weapon. Cersei Lannister had sensed the shift in the air. Her husband, once too drunk to notice, now kept silent watch over her children. Her every move was followed by Stark men and royal guards, not loyal to her. The moment she heard Robert had cancelled the hunt for Joffrey's name day celebration, she knew. He knew. That same night, Cersei met with her brother Jaime behind closed doors. She paced the room like a lioness caged. "They're going to take everything," she hissed. "Joffrey, my cellar, Tommenot children will be called bastards. They'll be torn from me or worse. Robert will kill them, or Ned Stark will." Jaime leaned against the wall, arms crossed. Then we kill them first. Cersei stopped, looked at him. No, she said. We don't act out of anger. We act with purpose. She sent a silent message to Petyr Baelish that very night. It was time to test his loyalty. Would he serve the lion or the wolf? Littlefinger, meanwhile, was already caught in a storm of his own. He had played many sides over the years, but he never expected Catelyn Stark to come to King's Landing and become the threat she was. It wasn't just that she was clever, she was bold. She had gone to Ser Barristan. She had whispered into Renly's ears. She had stolen the game right from under him. He burned with jealousy. She had always been his weakness, and now she was his enemy. So when Cersei offered him gold and titles along with something more tempting, power over the Vale, he accepted. That morning, chaos exploded. Ned Stark was walking through the Red Keep with Ser Barristan when they heard the first scream. It came from the Tower of the Hand. They ran. Catelyn had been there, organizing ravens to send to Winterfell, the Eyrie, and River But when Ned entered, the room was in pieces, scrolls scattered. One of their guards lay dead, his throat cut, and Catelyn was gone. A cold, sharp silence filled Ned's chest. His voice came out like gravel. Find her. The castle erupted. Robert was informed within the hour and was enraged. What in the seven hells is going on? Who touches the wife of my hand? He roared. The Ned's face was calm, still, because he knew. This was Cersei's move. They won't kill her, he said to Robert. Not yet. They want to trade her, or use her to silence. Robert, finally seeing the monster he had married, gave Ned full authority to act. Bring her back. And if you find the ones who did it, don't wait for my order. That same day, Varys arrived with whispers. Catelyn was being held in a secret chamber beneath the Red Keep, not far at all. Cersei had hidden her right under their noses, guarded by sellswords paid through Littlefinger's gold. Ned gathered loyal men, Ser Barristan, Renly's knights, even a few gold cloaks still loyal to the realm. Then, silently, they moved through hidden passageways, led by Varys's map of the tunnels. The battle was short and brutal. Steel clashed in the dark. Ned fought like a younger man, his blade cutting down a sellsword who tried to stab him from behind. Renly's men cornered the rest, and Ser Barristan freed Catelyn from chains that bruised her wrists. Her face was tired but fierce. They wanted to send my head back to Winterfell, she whispered, to break you. Ned helped her up. His voice shook, but not with fear, with fury. Not today. The next morning, the city awoke to a new reality. Petyr Baelish was arrested by order of King Robert, dragged through the streets screaming lies and curses. You'll regret this, Ned Stark. The game isn't over. Cersei was summoned before the king, but she did not come. She had taken Joffrey and Tommen to Maegor's holdfast, behind locked doors and guarded by the king's guard, half of whom were still loyal to her. The Red Keep was divided. War hadn't started yet, but the lines were drawn. Robert stood by Ned. Renly and Barristan stood with them, but Cersei had knights, gold, and the queen's fury behind her. That evening, Robert gave Ned a choice. We take her now, force her out, or we wait and try to end this without blood. Ned looked at Catelyn, her hands bruised, her eyes cold. He said one word: war. Robert Baratheon had always loved battles until he had to face one without a warhammer in his hand. This battle was different. It wasn't in the open fields or against rebel armies. It was hidden behind curtains and smiles. It was inside his own castle, and this time the enemy wore silk, not armor. Cersei had made her move, and now the Starks had responded. The capital was on edge. Every servant whispered. Every guard watched the other. The Red Keep, once Robert's seat of power, now felt like a snake's nest. Ned knew that war was not just coming. It had already begun. The first strike came 3 nights later. A fire broke out in the Tower of the Hand. At first they thought it was an accident, but as flames licked up the stone, one of Ned's guards, Sir Jory Cassel, ran out with a bloodied arm. "Assassins!" he shouted. "They tried to set the fire with us inside. They had failed, but just barely. If Catelyn had still been resting there, she would have been burned alive." That same night, Varys brought more news. "They have the gold cloaks, he whispered. "Janos Lind has sworn to the Queen. Half the city watch will turn on you the moment she gives the word. Ned sat in Robert's chamber, staring at the fire, not the one in the tower, but the one in the hearth. His face was pale, his jaw clenched. Robert paced behind him, limping on his injured leg, a goblet of wine in hand. "I should have killed her years ago," he muttered. "I let her rot my kingdom from the inside, and now she's about to burn it down." Ned turned to face him. "We still have a chance. If we can get Marcella and Tommen out safely, if we can take Joffrey alive, we can end this without spilling their blood." Robert looked at him like he was mad. "You still want to save her children?" "They're innocent," Ned said, "and they're still your kin." Robert laughed bitterly. "No, they're not." The next morning, Ned made his move. He summoned Sir Barristan and Sir Renly. Together they led a group of loyal men into Maegor's holdfast. They meant to capture Joffrey and bring him to Robert, not to kill him, not yet, but to remove him from Cersei's grasp. When they entered the holdfast, Joffrey was gone. Tommen too. Only Myrcella remained, guarded by 2 Lannister guards who gave her up without a fight. The girl was terrified. She asked where her mother was. Ned didn't answer. They brought her to Robert. The king looked at her for a long time. She looked nothing like him, and yet when she cried, his face softened. He turned away. "Take her to the Tower of Baelor. Guard her well. No harm is to come to her." Meanwhile, Cersei had vanished. Varys spies said she had fled into the tunnels under the Red Keep with Jaime and a group of gold cloaks. Renly wanted to send men after them immediately, but Ned warned against. "She's not fleeing, she's preparing her next strike." He was right. That evening, as Robert prepared to address the small council, a scream echoed through the halls. Renly's steward, a young boy from Storm's End, came running. His face was pale, his clothes were soaked in red. Ned met him in the hall. "What happened?" It's King Robert, my lord," the boy stammered. "He collapsed in his chamber. There was blood, so much blood." Ned's heart stopped. They rushed to the king's room. Robert was on the ground, eyes wide open, a goblet still in his hand. Wine spilled across the floor deep red. His lips were stained, and foam curled at the edge of his mouth. Maester Pycelle arrived moments later. He pressed trembling fingers to the king's neck and shook his head. "He's dead," Pycelle said softly. "No," Catelyn whispered. "No, this can't be." But Ned knew. Poison, a coward's weapon. Cersei had struck first and hardest. The throne was now empty, and Joffrey Baratheon, or rather, Joffrey Lannister, would claim it by force. That night, Ned stood before the Iron Throne. The city outside was already stirring. The bells had not yet rung, but they would. And once they did, all of Westeros would know the king was dead, and war, true war, would begin. The bells began to toll at dawn. Dong, 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 dong. King Robert Baratheon was dead, and the city knew it. The sound echoed through the stone walls of the Red Keep, and all across King's Landing, people began to murmur. Some cried, some prayed, but others sharpened swords. Ned Stark stood in the throne room, watching the Iron Throne as if it were a beast about to bite. Behind him, Sir Barristan Selmy and a dozen loyal guards waited, their faces grim. Catelyn was by his side, her hand tight on his arm. Myrcella stood nearby, confused and silent, guarded by Renly's men. They didn't have time to grieve. Robert's death wasn't just a tragedy, it was a spark, and the wildfire it would unleash was already lit. At mid-morning, Joffrey Lannister entered the Red Keep through the front gates, flanked by gold cloaks and 2 King's Guards, Sir Meryn Trant and Sir Burrows Blount. Jaime Lannister rode at his side, dressed not in white, but in crimson and gold armor. They had taken the throne room by storm. Ned had prepared for this. He met them at the Great Hall, in front of a crowd of nobles and councilmen who had rushed in once they heard the bell. The small council was divided. Now Varys stood in silence. Littlefinger had vanished, and Pycelle looked old and weak, muttering about mourning in peace. Joffrey walked ahead of everyone, bold and arrogant, wearing a golden crown that had not been placed on him by any lord or septon. "I am the king," he declared, his voice high and sharp, "and I order Eddard Stark to bend the knee." Ned didn't move. "You are not Robert's son," he said loudly, clearly. You have no claim to that throne, and I will not kneel to a bastard." Gasps broke through the crowd. Cersei stepped forward from behind Jaime, dressed in mourning black, but her eyes were alight with fire. "You dare speak lies in front of the court?" she hissed. "I speak truth," Ned said. "Your son has no right to sit on the Iron Throne. His father is not Robert Baratheon, and I have proof." He lifted a scroll, sealed with the late king's ring. "This is Robert's final order naming me Lord Protector of the Realm until the rightful heir, Stannis Baratheon, is crowned." Jaime's face twisted. "So it's treason then?" "No," Ned replied calmly. "It's loyalty to the king's last wish." Cersei didn't hesitate. "Seize him!" she screamed. At once, the gold cloaks moved, but so did Ned's men. Swords were drawn, the sound of steel ringing in the hall like thunder. Renly's knights surged toward Renend and Catelyn. Renly's knights surged forward, surrounding Ned and Catelyn. Ser Barristan drew his blade without a word and stepped between Ned and the advancing guards. "You swore to protect the king's peace," he said to the gold cloaks. For a moment, just a moment, the room held its breath. Then Janos Slynt, commander of the City Watch, gave the order that would split the realm in two, kill them all. What followed was chaos. Sword, clash, screams filled the throne room. Lords fled. Catelyn was pulled back by Ser Barristan, while Ned fought side by side with Renly's men. Blood spilled across the marble floor beneath the Iron Throne, and the boy Joffrey stood atop the steps, watching with wide, wild eyes. Jaime Lannister cut down a knight with terrifying speed, making his way toward Ned. But just as he raised his sword, Grey Wind came. Robb Stark's direwolf, who had stayed hidden with Catelyn, lunged through the hall like a shadow. The beast leapt onto Jaime, tearing him away from Ned with a savage growl. Jaime screamed as the wolf's teeth sank deep into his shoulder. "Call it off!" Cersei shrieked. "Call off the beast!" But it was too late. The throne room became a battlefield. Ned was wounded, his arm cut, but alive. Ser Barristan fought like a man half his age, holding off 3 guards at once. Renly's men, trained and armored, pushed the gold cloaks back. Then came the turning point. Stannis Baratheon's bannermen arrived at the gates. Word reached them, ravens sent by Catelyn before the chaos began. Stannis's men, marching under the fiery heart of the Lord of Light, entered the city by the docks and stormed toward the Red Keep. When the banners of Dragonstone rose above the battlements, the gold cloaks broke. The throne room was theirs. Cersei and Joffrey fled through a side corridor, vanishing into the tunnels. Jaime was dragged off by his men, half-conscious, bleeding. Pycelle collapsed in the corner, forgotten, and Ned Stark stood once more at the foot of the Iron Throne, his hand clutching his bleeding arm, his eyes full of fire. "Send word to Dragonstone," he ordered. "Tell Stannis the throne awaits him." 3 days after the bloodbath in the throne room, the gates of King's Landing swung open to the hard rhythm of marching. Stannis Baratheon had arrived. With him came 5,000 soldiers bearing the banners of Dragonstone black stags over red fields, many now stitched beside the fiery heart of the Lord of Light. The city watched in nervous silence as the grim brother of the late king entered the Red Keep without celebration. Stannis did not smile, did not speak empty words. He simply demanded truth, order, and the crown owed to him. Ned Stark met him in the throne room, still healing from his wound. Catelyn stood behind him, eyes sharp, always watching for danger in every shadow. Stannis looked at Ned with cold approval. "You did what Robert never could," he said. "You cut out the rot." Ned gave a small nod, but the roots still run deep. Stannis didn't argue. He never did. He simply gave the order. "Find Cersei. Find the boy. Put them in chains." The hunt began immediately. The Lannister hold on King's Landing had broken, but they had not vanished. Cersei, Joffrey, and a wounded Jaime had disappeared into the city's underground with the help of loyal gold cloaks. Coin, the mile. The people whispered of red-haired boys beaten for looking like the prince, and Lannister banners torn down and burned in the streets. But the lioness was not done yet. She sent a message to Ned, written in her own hand. "You have my daughter. I have your secrets. The game is not over." Ned read the letter in silence, then passed it to Catelyn. Her face paled. "She knows about John," she whispered. Ned's jaw clenched. "She's bluffing." Ned's jaw clenched. "She's bluffing." But deep inside, he wasn't sure. The truth of Jon Snow, his birth, his blood, his right, had always been the one thing he never spoke of, not even to Robert. If Cersei had stumbled on it, the consequences would go far beyond this war. But for now, she was still in hiding. Stannis turned his attention to justice. A tribunal was called within the Great Hall. The lords of the court, those who had not fled, were summoned. With Sir Davos at his side, Stannis stood as judge over the crimes of Queen Cersei and her kin. Myrcella, still under guard, was not accused. Ned and Catelyn had made sure she was protected. They had no interest in punishing a child for a mother's sins, but Tommen's name was called. His guards had been captured in the chaos. He was found, hidden in the cellar of a sept, crying for his mother. Now he sat in silence beside Myrcella, clutching her hand as the hall filled with voices of treason, lies, and murder. Sir Jaime Lannister was still missing, but Grand Maester Pycelle was brought forward, weak and trembling. Ned watched with no pity as Pycelle was accused of poisoning Robert on Cersei's command. The old man wept, saying he was only following the Queen's orders. He begged for mercy. Stannis gave him none. He served false kings. He whispered poison. He will die. Pycelle was taken out, screaming. The next prisoner was Petyr Baelish. His trial was quieter, but crueler. Varys gave evidence. Letters were read aloud, and even Catelyn Stark herself testified, speaking of the lies Littlefinger told, the kidnapping of Tyrion, and the plot to have her murdered in her husband's tower. Baelish stood calm through it all, smiling faintly. In the end, he looked straight at Ned. "I loved her, you know, your wife. You never deserved her." Ned didn't reply. He simply turned away. Baelish's smile faded. He was sentenced to death, beheaded by Ser Barristan Selmy the following dawn. No songs were sung for him, only whispers. But while justice was being served, darkness was moving beyond the wall. Ravens brought news of unrest in the Riverland. Tywin Lannister had not remained silent. His forces had gathered in Casterly Rock and were marching toward Harrenhal, with Robert dead and Joffrey unseated. Tywin no longer needed politics. He would come with steel, fire, and far across the narrow sea. Varys received troubling news. A silver-haired girl in the east had hatched dragons from dead stone. A bloodline thought lost was rising again. In his quiet chambers, Varys met with Catelyn Stark in secret. "You must prepare," he told her. "The realm is shifting. Stannis is law, but law does not rule men's hearts." "What do you mean?" she asked. Varys looked out the window to where the Iron Throne sat empty. "I mean that you started a storm, but you may not live to see how deep it floods." The wind over the riverlands carried smoke. Black plumes rose from burning farms and shattered keeps. Villagers fled down muddy roads, their carts heavy with children and what little food they could carry. Behind them rode Tywin Lannister, the Lion of Casterly Rock, and his army 10,000 strong, armored in red and gold, dragging fear behind them like a banner. He had not spoken a word to King's Landing. He sent no letters, made no demands. His reply to Stannis Baratheon's rule came in flames. Harrenhal fell in 2 days. Its ancient halls were left soaked in blood, its people butchered or chained. "Tywin didn't take the castle to rule it," was a message. "You took my grandchildren, my son, my pride. Now he would take the realm." In the Red Keep, Ned and Stannis stood over a table of war maps. Pins marked the movement of Lannister forces, but they were spreading faster than expected. "He's not waiting," Ned said, voice low. "He's not fighting for the throne. He's fighting to destroy anyone who stood against Cersei." Stannis' mouth was a thin, grim line. "Let him come. My sword is ready." But it wasn't enough. Stannis had the throne, yes, and the law on his side. But the hearts of the realm were still scattered. The Reach, the Stormlands, even the Vale had not declared. Most were still watching, waiting to see who would fall first. And now, word came that Robb Stark was marching south. When Ned read The Raven from Winterfell, his hands trembled, not from fear, but from something heavier. Robb had raised the northern banners. House Umber, House Manderley, House Carstark were behind him. Catelyn had sent word home weeks ago, but she hadn't expected this. Her boy, no, her lord, was riding to war. He wasn't coming to save his father. He was coming to avenge. I told him to stay and protect Winterfell, Ned muttered. He's your son, Catelyn said quiet. Would you have stayed? Ned said nothing. As the north moved south, more ravens brought darker omens. The Vale had sealed its gates. Lysa Arryn refused to declare for either side. She claimed neutrality, but Varys whispered that she was waiting to see who would offer her the most power for her silence. Renly Baratheon had vanished from the city, slipping away with Sir Loras Tyrell and a group of royal knights. His departure was quiet, but the meaning was clear. He did not accept Stannis' rule. Even allies were becoming unpredictable. But the greatest threat was not across the rivers or behind castle walls. It was in the sky. Varys came to Ned late one night, robes flowing like shadows. His eyes, for once, were serious. She's coming, he said softly. The girl, the last dragon. Ned blinked. Daenerys. Yes, she crossed the desert with the Dothrakian fire in her hands. The Khal is dead, but she lives, and the stories say she has dragon. Catelyn, standing by the window, turned sharply. That's not possible. But Varys didn't flinch. I've seen many impossible things. I've heard her name in 6 cities already. Mother of Dragons. The people whisper it like a prayer. Stannis, when told, scoffed. Let her come. Let her burn what she wants. I hold the throne. But Catelyn wasn't so sure. If the people love her, they'll follow her, even if she comes with nothing but a name and a myth. Ned stared out at the city. His heart was heavy with too many wars, too many kings, too many children forced to wear crowns and carry blades. Then we may not be fighting Tywin or Cersei in the end, he said. We may be fighting history itself. The next day, Jaime Lannister was found. One of Varys' informants had tracked him to a smuggler's den by Blackwater Bay. He was weak, still bleeding from Grey Wind's bite, but alive. Captured and thrown in the Red Keep's dungeon. Stannis wanted him hanged. Catelyn wanted him questioned. Let me speak to him, she said. Not as queen or prisoner, but as a mother. Ned hesitated. Why? Because I know what kind of man he is. And men like Jaime don't fear justice. They fear truth. So that evening Catelyn descended into the dungeons alone. The Lion of Lannister sat in chains, his hair matted, his smirk gone. She didn't raise her voice, didn't curse him for Bran or for Robert, or for any of it. She only said one thing. Where is Cersei hiding? Jaime stared at her, then chuckled bitterly. You don't find Cersei, he said. You only see her when it's too late. Catelyn Stark stood in the dim cells staring at Jaime Lannister. His words echoed in her mind like a curse. You don't find Cersei. You only see her when it's too late. She left the dungeon with a storm building in her chest. Jaime wasn't bluffing. Cersei was too quiet, too hidden, and for a woman like her, silence was never safety. It was strategy. The next morning, the city awoke to scream. The Tower of Baelor had collapsed. Stone and flame burst into the sky like a dragon's breath. Smoke filled the streets, dozens dead. And from the ashes came horror. Marcella Baratheon was gone. The guards were butchered. Sir Barristan barely survived the blast. Catelyn arrived as they pulled bodies from the rubble. Her hands shook, her face pale. She had protected that girl like her own. And now she took her, Catelyn whispered. She took her daughter back. Ned clenched his fists. She wanted one last piece of leverage. No, Catelyn said. She's not hiding anymore. She's readying something. One last fire, and fire was coming. That very day, ravens brought news that made the Iron Throne itself seem small. Daenerys Targaryen had crossed the sea, not with armies, not with sellswords, but with dragons, 3 of them small, but growing, and she had landed in Dorne. The Martells, long bitter about Elya's death at the hands of Lannister men, had welcomed her with open arms. The South burned with her name. Stannis paced the council chamber like a caged wolf. We cannot fight dragons, not with bows and walls. The realm will bend to her the moment they see wings in the sky. She has no army, Catelyn argued. She has only her blood. Ned shook his head. That's all a Targaryen ever needed. And then came the final blow. Tywin Lannister was dead. His men had camped near the Blackwater, preparing to move on King's Landing, but they never reached the gates. In the dead of night, fires erupted in their tents. Crossbows fired from trees. Horses screamed. Robb Stark had struck. With the north behind him and the mind sharpened by war, Robb had cut Tywin's supply lines, then surrounded the camp with brutal speed. The battle lasted a single night. At dawn, Tywin's banner fell in the mud. Stannis read the Raven aloud in court. Lord Tywin fell on his knees, struck through the heart by a northern blade. His eyes were open when he died. The council was silent. The lion was dead. The cums scattered. But Ned did not celebrate. Cersei will burn the city before she lets us win, and she nearly did. They found her in the Sept of Baelor, hours before dusk, standing before the altar in a gown of red. Her blonde hair was loose, her eyes hollow. Myrcella knelt beside her, tears in her eyes, hands bound in gold cords. All around them were barrels of wildfire. Ser Davos found them first. He didn't draw a blade, just spoke softly. "Don't do this. You've lost." But Cersei smiled. "I never lose. I just change the rules." Ned and Catelyn arrived moments later. Ned stepped forward, sword sheathed. "Let the girl go," he said. "She's not part of this." "She's mine," Cersei whispered. "The last thing I have left." Then her voice cracked. "You took my son. You took my father. You took the crown. And now you want to take my daughter too." Catelyn stepped forward, slowly. Her voice was calm, steady. "Mother to mother. We didn't take her. You ran. You hid. You burned. Myrcella deserves better than to die with your rage." For a moment, Cersei said nothing. Then her hand trembled. Her fingers hovered over the torch and dropped it. Catelyn rushed in, pulled Myrcella back. Ser Davos and Ned kicked the torch away. Flames licked the edge of the barrels, but died before they could spread. Cersei collapsed to her knees. "My children were everything, and you turned them into weapons," Catelyn replied. "Cersei was taken in chains. Her trial would come, but her war was over." The next weeks moved swiftly. Stannis Baratheon was crowned. The lords of Westeros, one by one, bent the knee. Even the Reach, without Renly, turned to him. Peace returned, but it was a wounded peace. Daenerys sent a raven. She would come to Dragonstone for peace talks, but she made no promises. Her dragons had already flown over Oldtown. People cheered her name. And in the north, Robb Stark returned to Winterfell as Warden of the North. Catelyn stood beside Ned as the ships prepared to sail for Dragonstone. "Do you believe peace will hold?" she asked. Ned looked at the sky. "I believe winter is still coming." And far to the east in the cold lands beyond the wall, something ancient stirred. Not queen, not lion, not dragon, but death. And it marched slowly south, while men squabbled over thrones of iron.